this is David. I'm a filmmaker and photographer based out of Tokyo, Japan. In a previous video, I talked about using this tiny anamorphic adapter to take cinematic footage in Hokkaido. And while the results were interesting, it's not exactly what you want when it comes to anamorphic footage. So when I booked my next trip to Kyushu, Japan, I decided to take a 2x anamorphic scope with me. For this trip, I once again took the GH5 for its rugged body, built-in stabilization, and most of all, its anamorphic capabilities. The SLR Magic 2x anamorphic was my adapter of choice to travel with. I used SLR Magic's rangefinder Cine adapter for focusing, and my taking lens was a Pentax K 40mm f2.8. This is about as wide as you could get with this setup without vignetting, while still using filters. This was my first time visiting Nagasaki, which is probably most known for being one of the two cities where an atomic bomb was dropped during World War II. I've also been to Hiroshima, and visiting these sites is something I think everyone should do once in their life if they have the chance. And although Nagasaki and Hiroshima share a tragic past, they both have a lot of rich history and culture well before the 20th century. Both cities being big port cities, they had the rare chance to interact with people from different countries when Japan was still very closed off. You can still see a lot of this influence in Nagasaki through its food, architecture, and culture. But there was one other aspect that really drew me to Nagasaki. One of my all-time biggest travel dreams was to visit the mysterious island of Hashima. This mostly man-made structure in the middle of the ocean has a silhouette that very much resembles a Japanese battleship, so it's colloquially known as Gunkanjima or Battleship Island in Japanese. Formerly an offshore mining operation, Hashima expanded over time to include apartments, schools, and even a pachinko parlor. Eventually, profits did dry up, and what we're left with today looks straight out of a movie. And in fact, if you've seen James Bond's Skyfall, Gunkanjima can be seen briefly, used as an exterior shot for the villain's lair, and Gunkanjima has also made its appearance in other films and pop culture. Knowing beforehand that I wanted to make the trip to Gunkanjima definitely influenced my decision to take an anamorphic kit with me. It's always a good idea to have goals and objectives like this to shape your trip and kit, but Hashima can be inaccessible during part of the year due to rough seas around the island, and although the seas were rough on that day, I was fortunate enough to film and photograph on the island itself. Due to the building's degradation, and for visitor safety, you can only walk on a small designated path for a very short amount of time. But even then, it was an unforgettable experience, and I'm really glad that I was able to capture it in anamorphic widescreen. Hashima was definitely the highlight of the trip, but it was only the first leg. On the way to my final destination Ibuski in the south of Kagoshima, there are many other interesting stops and locations. Amakusa, a chain of islands off the coast of Nagasaki, but actually in Kumamoto Prefecture, was the next stop on the trip. Nagasaki and Amakusa are one of the few places where Christianity became prevalent during Japan's period of isolation. This is another very cinematic area, not only for its natural beauty, but its larger-than-life heroes such as Amakusa Shiro, and its relation to movies like Martin Scorsese's Silence. There are many churches in the area, so I couldn't visit them all, but it's very striking to see that kind of building set to a Japanese coastal town. Another eerie and potentially cinematic location on the trip was Kirishima, a national park that spans the south of Miyazaki Prefecture to the north of Kagoshima Prefecture. Kirishima translates to Fog Island, and it definitely lived up to its name while I was there. Although having the anamorphic kit here was really cinematic at times, hiking trails were limited due to natural gas detected in the area, so this section of the trip was unfortunately cut short. But I have visited Kirishima in the past and had a chance to take very nice landscape pictures, so I'll post a few of those here. It's a very beautiful place worth visiting if you have the chance. A little further down south, where the weather was better, Kagoshima offers many unique tourist destinations. Sakurajima is a volcanic island a short distance from the mainland by ferry. You also have Chidan to the south, which has a memorial and peace museum focused on the Tokko or kamikaze pilots. Many Tokko pilots flew out of the south of Japan, never to return, and visiting this museum in the countryside of Kagoshima is as impactful as visiting Hiroshima and Nagasaki in my opinion, where you can read letters from pilots that are just absolutely heartbreaking. And a little bit further south was the end of the trip, Ibuski. It's very well known for its volcanic sand baths and natural hot springs, so it was a great place to go and relax before heading home. Being able to go from the port town of Nagasaki to the foggy mountains of Kirishima was a terrific experience in Kyushu, Japan. And in making this video, I actually noticed a lot of similarities between my previous travel destination of Hokkaido and this most recent trip to Kyushu. Although being on opposite ends of Japan, they both received a lot of influence from other countries, which can still be seen today. This blending of cultures makes them some of the most interesting locations to visit in Japan, and I highly recommend either of them for a rich and fulfilling experience. But I don't think I'll be recommending the 2x anamorphic travel experience anytime soon. 2x anamorphic filming is quite a step up from 1.33. Rigs get larger and heavier and become more difficult to operate. Not to mention that the range of available taking lenses for 2x scopes tends to begin at the telephoto range, making things much less versatile. 1.33 squeeze anamorphic adapters that are set to infinity focus, like the Moondog's adapter, not only allow for more wide-angle lenses, but you can also kind of cheat some close focus capabilities that you wouldn't otherwise have with traditional 2x scope rigs. I also find that when traveling, I tend to stop down or focus to infinity to capture more details in landscapes, but this doesn't take advantage of Anamorphic's unique characteristics. As with the Hokkaido video, you do get the benefit of additional information to capture sweeping, widescreen vistas, but not every location is suited to this widescreen aspect, and depending on your adapter, while resolution does get a bump, the image quality might take a hit. Many videographers like myself would also like to take photos while they travel, and that can be a bit tricky with the 2x anamorphic rig. It's not impossible and can lead to some very cool results in many cases, but when it comes to stills, I think most people would prefer to switch lenses or remove their anamorphic adapters only to reinstall them when it comes time to film. This can all be quite a pain and even potentially ruin your footage. In a rush to start filming after photographing, it's very easy to mount your anamorphic lens slightly askew and end up with lopsided footage. To avoid all of this, I actually took a separate stills camera, which was very nice, but it ends up being more gear, more weight, and I think it compromises your actual travel experience. Although the results of having a separate stills camera and 2x scope are more pleasing and high quality, it was definitely more time, effort, and baggage than the compact kit I took to Hokkaido, which also included a stills camera, albeit a much smaller one. That being said, I'm very satisfied with the results, but I think I will be looking for a more travel-friendly anamorphic rig for the future. But let me know what you think. Do the results justify the means, and would you take an anamorphic kit like this on vacation? And if I had to do it all over again, I think I would try to source a better taking lens for this kind of kit, something like the Leica or Minolta rangefinder 40mm Summicron f2 lens is going to be a lot smaller, and then taking something like the Minolta CLE or like a CL camera for stills photography, as well as maybe the 90mm f4 or 28mm f2.8 that go great with those systems. I think you could get a really lean, cohesive package for both anamorphic and stills filming. Anyways, I'm David. I'll be back with more videos soon. Thanks.